Good evening, everybody. Sorry for the abrupt entry. I'm Jay Barth, Director of the Clinton Presidential Library and Museum, and welcome to the Clinton Presidential Center, of course, and to another event in our Off the Record series. I also want to welcome those who are viewing tonight's program on C-SPAN. This speaker series brings Clinton White House alumni to the Clinton Presidential Center to offer never-before-heard stories about their time at the White House. And today, that guest is someone who is here every day, Stephanie Streett, the Executive Director of the Clinton Foundation. Off the Record is co-sponsored by the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Presidential Library. And we at the Clinton Library are thrilled to co-sponsor this series because while we hold the 80 million documents, the 20 million emails, and the nearly 3 million photographs and audiovisual materials of the Clinton White House years, we know that the humans behind those records have incredibly insightful stories to tell about the decisions expressed in them. You likely saw our longtime archivist, Adam Bergfeld, outside when you came in, who had some of these records from Stephanie's time in the White House to show. And with every off-the-record visitor, we're also creating a new staff spotlight entry on our website that tells a bit more about the staff member and their work, but also links to the records from our collections. And we posted a new staff spotlight this morning about Stephanie. At off-the-record events, Stephanie Streett is typically the moderator. But tonight she is in a different lane, and we hope she stays in it, more or less, being interviewed about her memories, about her path to the White House and her 8 years there, starting when she was just 26 years old, which is truly extraordinary. As many of you know, Stephanie is a native of Russellville, Arkansas, and a proud member of the Streett family, which has been deeply committed to public service for generations. She became involved in Democratic Party politics early on and then became a young Democrat at the University of Arkansas. She took a break from her undergraduate studies to go to Washington and serve as a staff member for the United States Senate Committee on the Budget. She returned to Fayetteville to graduate and to prepare to enter the legal profession, like other generations of her family. But the Clinton primary campaign diverted her from that path, and she soon came to the exploratory campaign based at the old paint store on 7th Street in Little Rock to begin working in 1991. And as an aside, I'd worked at that same paint store a year earlier in the final gubernatorial campaign. 34 years later, she remains central to the Clinton post-presidential work. After the Clinton victory in 1992, Stephanie went to work on the transition, and then for 8 years in the scheduling office, first as special assistant to the president, then deputy assistant to the president, and finally as assistant to the president and director of scheduling. Immediately after the end of the administration, Stephanie came home to Arkansas with her husband, Don Urbach, to lead the Clinton Foundation in Little Rock as executive director and she has served in that role since 2001 and oversees the strategy and management of the Clinton Presidential Center. This place, including the Clinton School of Public Service, presents a unique perspective on the work, past, present, and future, of the 42nd President of the United States, William J. Clinton, and provides extensive educational and cultural opportunities for visitors of all ages. In addition to her daily work here at the Clinton Presidential Center, I know that Stephanie is incredibly proud of her work overseeing the Presidential Leadership Scholars Program on behalf of the Clinton Foundation. This first-of-its-kind leadership development program produces bold and principled leaders committed to solving our world's most pressing challenges through a really unique collaboration between the presidential centers of George W. Bush, William J. Clinton, George H.W. Bush, and Lyndon Baines Johnson. As a point of personal privilege, I want to thank Stephanie for her collaboration and her friendship across my time in recent years as director of the Clinton Library. While we've naturally occasionally had differences of perspective, our ultimate goal has been to work together to enhance the impact of the Clinton Presidential Center in its work in this state and beyond, and I think we've done great work and continue to do so. Tonight's conversation is going to be moderated by Stephen Goodin. Stephen is Executive Director of Strategic Management in the Regulatory and Public Affairs Department at NextEra Energy Resources. Stephen served Bill Clinton's administration as the president's aide, working directly in the White House with the president and managing the president's daily schedule through visits to more than 150 domestic cities and over 30 foreign countries. Stephen's career in the public sector also included work for a U.S. congressman and leadership positions with the 1992 Clinton-Gore presidential campaign and at the Democratic National Committee. Stephen graduated with honors from the University of Texas at Austin with a degree in psychology, and he completed Harvard Business School's executive program in nonprofit management, and he studied finance at the University of New York's Baruch College. Stephen lives in Alexandria, Virginia, and is married to Bibb Hubbard, and they have two young adult sons. Stephen and Stephanie, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Barth. And yes, we're going to try to have Stephanie not be the moderator, but those of us who know her, you can't control her, you can only hope to contain her. So I'll do my best to contain her. But
I'll do my best to cooperate.
Yes, and your lack of containment. And I want to say, I'm sure Stephanie feels this too, it's so great to see, I don't want to say old friends, I'll say longtime friends in the room. So you honor us with your presence, and thank you for being here. So, Stephanie.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Oh, okay. What was that, 20 seconds in?
No, I just, before we get started, want to say thank you as well to my colleagues here. I am so lucky to work with such an incredible team of professionals who do such a fantastic job here. I often say that my secret to success is hiring people that are smarter than I am, and this room is filled with many of them here. So I want to thank them. I want to thank Jay and the partnership we have with all of the incredible staff at the Clinton Presidential Library. And then obviously the Clinton School of Public Service is also on our side. And there's such incredible people here as well. The students that come every year, Vicki Soto, the dean. It's really great to work so closely together with such really incredible people. So thank you. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to one more people.
No, two more groups.
No, two more groups. First, obviously, our Clinton Center members and our donors who are here. We can only do these programs because of your support, and we really, really appreciate it. I know everyone here appreciates the opportunity to come to events like these here in Little Rock, Arkansas, see the kinds of exhibits, have students be able to come here and participate in leadership opportunities, and that's only because of your ongoing support, and we're super grateful. And our volunteers are wonderful as well. So thank you all. And I'll stop and turn it over to the moderator.
I was going to do that just to show her that I watched the other on the records. And I knew the housekeeping chores that she took care of, but those are very important. We have to take care of those things. So, okay, let's get into it.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
So we heard a little bit about your bio, but help set the stage for us a little bit. Like, how did you go from Russellville, Arkansas to the White House? What was your journey through public service to get there?
How long do we have?
45 minutes.
Okay. I will try to be brief. As Jay said, I attended the University of Arkansas and had the opportunity to participate in lots of other outside extracurricular activities from school, which is part of the reason I was on the 6-year plan instead of the 4-year plan. But you know what? It all turned out okay. I got to work on a lot of campaigns. I was very active in Young Democrats. And even in high school, I had the opportunity to work on campaigns. I, as a little girl, would accompany my father, who was an elected official and had to run for re-election, I think like every 2 years. And so it was like a constant campaign. So that's sort of was infused in my spirit, like campaigning and going to political events like the Mount Nebo Chicken Fry or the Johnson County Peach Festival, the St. Joseph's Catholic Point Spaghetti Supper. Like that was just part of what you did. Like everybody goes to those events. So that sort of having that sort of infused from a very young age and watching that process and sort of how retail politics in Arkansas, it's like everybody knows everybody. Everyone's kind of on a first name basis. So that was really had sort of an indelible mark in my mind. And so obviously during high school, college, working on campaigns, I was the campus coordinator for the Dukakis-Benson campaign. I know that's super impressive. And so that was my first foray, if you will, into presidential politics. And then there was an experience there where Senator Benson, who was the vice presidential nominee, was coming to the University of Arkansas. And we had like 5 days, to put together this rally. I had never been around advance people or, a presidential visit or a candidate visit like this. And so all of these people came in town, and I was like their go-to person for those 5 days. We didn't sleep. Like, we had to find the site. We had to, there was no texting. Everything we did by hand. Made signs, put up, did phone banks to get people to come. And working with those advanced people, I thought, this is so interesting. Like, it really made an impression on me. Like, they get to travel all over the country and do this kind of thing, and it's really cool, and you meet people, and and you go on to the next thing. It's like a really fast pace, which I like that. And so I worked with all these advanced people, and we put a big event together. To me, it was like the biggest event. I think in my mind there were like 100,000 people there, but it was actually, I think, probably like 3,000 people. But it's, to me, seemed massive. And I'll never forget standing behind stage, and beforehand I was briefing all of the stage participants on here's what we're going to do. And Governor Clinton then pulled me aside. He's like, "Have you met have you met Senator Benson?" I was like, "Oh, no, I'm just the help. No, I have not." And he said, "Well, come here, I'm going to introduce you." And he pulls me over there. And, as President Clinton, who's always so gracious, he gives me full credit. This is Stephanie Streett. She comes from a long line of Arkansas Democrats, and she is the one that's responsible for this event today. Everything you see here was because she did this, giving me the full credit. And, that experience and that whole putting that event together and the advanced part of it and the scheduling, that was something that stayed with me, even when I went to D.C. and came back. And sort of that was my first foray. I'll fast forward because this could take all day. I went to D.C., came back, and finished my degree, and I was thinking about taking the LSAT. I was taking a lot of these prep courses, and that's when our governor at that time was traveling around the state, talking to the people of Arkansas about whether he should make this run or not. And there was a rally happening in Fayetteville that I was working on, and so I decided to go up to him afterwards and said, "If you decide to run for president, I really want to work on your campaign. As you may know, I have presidential campaign experience, having been the campus coordinator for the Dukakis-Benson campaign." And, anyway, he said to me, "Stephanie, that's great. You should go to Little Rock. And I'm about to open my exploratory committee." And he said, "You need to go talk to Linda." And so, because Arkansas is such a small state, and everyone knows anyway, when he said go talk to Linda, I knew who he was talking about. He was talking about Linda Dixon. And Linda, as you know, was the governor's secretary. Well, what you may not know, for about 12 or 14 years before she went to work at the governor's office, she was my father's secretary when he was the prosecuting attorney in Russellville. So I had worked for Linda as a little girl, going to get her sandwiches and taking, just answering phones. And so I went to see Linda. She set me up. I got to work with people like Norman here. I got to work with Sheila Bronfman. Many of you, Patty Kreiner, Bev Lindsay is here. I was everyone's little girl Friday. The first youngster, really, I wasn't hired. I was doing it for free. I did that for 2 or 3 months. President Clinton, obviously, Governor Clinton announced he was running. I was hired to be, again, a glorified girl Friday, and it was really fun. And I got to pick up the George Stephanopouloses and the James Carvilles at the airport and help them find places to live, help them figure out where the drive-through liquor stores were, the dry cleaners, and all the important things. And then I met David Wilhelm and sort of befriended him and DG. And hearkening back to that experience that I had on the Dukakis-Benson campaign, when it was time, when they started really building up the staff, I went to David and said, I have presidential campaign experience, and I've worked on events and worked with advanced people. I would really like to work in that scheduling and advance office. And that day, I remember he said to me, "Stephanie, you are the first person here in the morning. You're the last person to leave at night." I would literally go to his house and get his laundry and take it to the Razorback Fun Wash because he at the last minute would have to go on a big trip. The point was, he said, you are the kind of person that will do whatever it takes to get the job done. Yes, you have real experience working on campaigns and doing that, but yes, so he gave me the chance to do it, and then 34 years later, here I am.
Well, you answered. I was going to ask, did you choose scheduling or did scheduling choose you? But it sounds like you chose it.
I chose scheduling in advance. I did go out on the road for the first month or two. Again, this was all before he announced. I traveled with the First Lady of Arkansas, which is
Heard of her.
Interesting. Patty Solis, if you're watching or will watch Patty, I love you, but you were a terrible advance person. And so she decided herself too, she was going to be in the office, so she stopped traveling. I traveled with now Secretary Clinton for about 4 or 5 trips, and she was so low maintenance. She would not let me carry her bags. She had her own plane tickets. She was very, she was so used to just taking care of herself. And what I did, I would take notes, when she was doing roundtable meetings or speeches, and then take up people's business cards and take notes on who she needed to thank and write notes to and follow up with. But other than that, she literally was like, I can handle this. I've got this. Obviously that's very different now, but at one time, that was how she rolled.
All right. I also want to acknowledge your mother being here tonight.
Of course.
And those of us who know this, the S in Stephanie S. Streett is for Sue. And the next generation of Streets interested in public services with us as well. So we're glad to have you guys here. Okay.
That would be my daughter, Olivia, who's sitting right here, next to my husband, Don.
I wasn't going to embarrass her, but you can.
I know.
Okay, so let's move forward to the 92 campaign a little bit now.
Okay.
And was there a certain point where you actually knew that this guy's going to win? He's actually going to be the president.
I knew when I came to the paint store that he was going to win. And I think the
Good
Beth
answer.
Lindsays of the
Good
world
answer.
and the Patty Kreiners in the world and Norma, we all, had that feeling, which I think part of the success of that campaign was because there were people that knew President Clinton, knew Secretary Clinton, knew the work they'd done here on everything from education reform to all of the other great things that they had done for our state. And we felt like it was his time, and he had a plan. He talked about his plan. His speeches are so consistent. The speech he gave when he announced, when he talked about his goals for the country, those are the same goals that he has today. And so, he had thought about this. And so it was very clear to us that, this was the real thing. He had a real chance of winning. Other people that didn't know him didn't think that, but they soon found out what a formidable candidate he was.
Well, and such a fighter, and those of us in New Hampshire in early February, we probably had our doubts a couple of days, but he washed those away by turning into the comeback kid, as we all know.
Speaking of New Hampshire, can I ask you a question? Stephen, how did you get to the campaign? You were there before he announced too. Stephen has been around from, this is year 34 for you too. Talk about, did you just show up, or how did you?
Yeah, so you were talking about the president being consistent when he was governor and a candidate, and what we were talking at the public service school today, and I talked about his announcement speech, which I wasn't here for, but I watched from a congressional office, and he talked about the forgotten middle class, fighting for the forgotten middle class, and that stuck with me, and I was like, this guy's onto something. And I had no idea, got to be honest, I had no idea who Bill Clinton was. Started researching him, got really excited about him as a candidate, and just fired off a letter to the campaign headquarters, to the paint store, not knowing it was a paint store. And I got a nice letter from Catherine Cornelius saying, thank you for your interest in Governor Clinton's campaign. We're going to need help all over the country. Well, bless your heart. Be right back. Never heard from Catherine again until we worked in the White House together. So I decided New Hampshire's where the action is, fired off a letter up to New Hampshire, didn't get hired, but I got some interest in getting hired, decided to go up there anyways, packed my car up and drove up to New Hampshire and said, I'm going to make myself useful. And Patty Kreiner was like, we will find a job for you. And I think I got an exotic $500 a month pay and ample floor space on the flop room the flop house that we stayed at in Manchester, New Hampshire. So that's how I joined on.
Patty Kreiner, a legendary individual herself from Little Rock, who continues to be such an important part of the Clintons' lives. And this room is filled with FOBs. I mean, literally at every single table, there are people that were around way before I was that have worked with the Clintons and continue to support them now today at the center. So many of them are our volunteers. It's really remarkable that the people, and I think that says a lot about Bill and Hillary Clinton.
Oh, for sure,
that
yeah.
People like Francis Cranford, there's so many people here in this room that literally were colleagues, friends, supporters, and are still here and still supporting and still showing up. And
they don't lose anybody.
Yeah, no.
We just keep
We're
aggregating.
lifers. It's like the Hotel California. You really...
And vice versa. I mean, like,
Yeah.
the relationship just stays and builds. Okay, so he won.
He won.
After the inauguration, you're headed to the White House for the first day of work. And you're one of the few people who was there from the first day to the last day. What was that first day like, going to the White House?
It's a blur. I remember we had, like, the inauguration offices were at George Washington University. And so a lot of us didn't even really get to participate. Well, the schedulers, we didn't even hardly participate in any of the inaugural activities because we were putting the schedule together. I remember going with my parents to the actual inauguration, and we did go to one of the balls. But other than that, I was, holed up there, working 24/7. I do remember some of us got a little break and we came out and sat in the reviewing stand so we could watch the parade, which was right in front of the West Wing entrance. You used to, obviously, Pennsylvania Avenue.
Pennsylvania Avenue was open.
So sat in the reviewing stand, and then it was time for all of us to go into the old executive office building. And I just remember walking in there, and if any of you have been to that building, it's huge. It's so imposing with like 20-foot ceilings and marble, everywhere. It was just unbelievable. And somebody, I don't even remember who it was, that showed us like an entire hallway. These are the scheduling and advance offices. And these offices were like someone's huge living room with fireplaces and, balconies. And it was unbelievable. And that was it. Here's your offices. Okay, like, do we have a computer? Like, is there a phone system? Like, it was like literally at that time, the Bush administration didn't leave like a very thorough transition sort of plan. So literally the first couple of weeks, we really had no clue. Do you know who saved us? Was the Secret Service. They obviously knew what to do. They knew, like, to get Marine One to land on the South Lawn, there was a whole protocol that how you did that. It didn't just like you call somebody, it just shows up. Like, the whole process and that was a big adjustment. Like, a campaign and, running a campaign and running a government are quite different. And sort of the White House and the structure around the White House, and process matters. Like, it's really important. Like, once you get in the White House and you understand how that machine works, there are people there that are there from each administration to sort of keep the trains running. It's not just political appointees that like clear out and come in. Like, the people that serve one administration to the next, the usher's office, the staff secretary's office, the NSC executive secretary, like, those people are critical. And those are the people, frankly, that helped us figure out how to do all these things. And they are so important. I can't underscore how important those federal workers are that work in the White House from one administration to the next. And I think it's such a travesty right now how those people have been summarily dismissed because they are the people that keep our democracy flourishing, and it's really disappointing.
They're not doing it for the money either.
No, they are not. They are dedicated public servants who help each administration come in and understand how to get Marine One to come to the South Lawn. They are the ones that like help you figure out like how to get a memo to the president. They are the ones at the National Security Council that help understand like why, the CIA briefer that comes in every morning to brief the president, like they don't just show up. Like it's a very structured process, and it's so important. So huge thanks to all the people that work in the federal government. My sister-in-law, Dawn's sister, has worked at OMB since 1991. Like these people's jobs are so important.
Yeah. Now you talked about, if you've been in the executive office building, it's very grandiose, right?
It is.
And you're at the White House, and there's so much history, and there's so much pomp and circumstance. I found sometimes it's hard to kind of, you've got to get a job done, but it's overwhelming. It's so awesome and beautiful. How did you balance that? You had a job to do, and you had to get over that, like the fancy office, and move on.
Yeah, I think part of it was like during the inauguration, everybody thought that I was just up there going to balls every night and going to parties and going to all these big concerts and walking across Memorial Bridge with the president, No, we were there, every night till like 4 a.m. And remember the lack of technology that we had. We physically had to type the schedule. We didn't email it around, like physically typed it, had to make like 500 copies, go stick it under, everyone's door during the inauguration, go to all the hotels, go to the Blair House, take it, it was a very cumbersome process, talking to the advance people. They would literally sketch like site diagrams like on a legal pad and fax it. Like faxing was the highest level of technology that we had in those days. So
it sounds like leeches in the medical community.
I know, like,
when we think about it today.
We talked about this today when I was visiting with Jay's staff, the archivists, who also are so incredible in the work that they do in preserving and protecting and opening all of the documents. We talked about like how the White House was so behind in the technology and how we use technology, specifically in the scheduling office. Someone is calling me. Anyway, but yeah.
It's President Clinton, he wants to know about his
It was
schedule.
a very laborious task to put a schedule out. Lots of different people. I mean, we would physically have to take the schedule down to the White House print shop for them to make all the zillions of copies that we would then put in envelopes, and we would then take them and put them under everyone's door. And then at 2 o'clock in the morning when something happened, and all of us would come back into the White House and retype the schedule and go through that again. I mean, that's what you did.
We're at the point where many of our children are getting involved in politics, and many of them worked on the 2024 campaign. And those of you who had this experience, try to explain clips to your children.
Clips.
Clips. We would cut up the newspaper, put it on paper, tape it on paper, make photocopies, and take the photocopies around to everybody.
Those were the clips. That was a real person's job in the White House, too, like to do the clips every morning.
Director of clips.
Director of clips, because those had to be available at like 5 a.m.
There was hell to pay if the clips were not out.
The clips, yeah.
And sometimes there was hell to pay if the clips were red and the clips were not good.
We both know all about that, yeah.
Especially if the New York Times said it. Okay, so what were some of your favorite moments over those 8 years? And, were there times where you ever thought, oh, this is it, the gravy train's ending, I might actually get fired?
Yeah. Well, let's start with the day I thought I would get fired first, and then we'll go to the good stuff. And Stephen, you'll remember this, because I think you were the president's aide during this period. When President Clinton was staying with Greg Norman and fell in the middle of the night, and what did he do to his kneecap?
I think he tore some tendon. He needed some major surgery on his knee, yeah.
Well, so again, going back to how process matters and protocol, when I say protocol, but like there is a rhythm to why that there is a trip director and why there is always a traveling chief of staff when the president travels. It may not be the chief of staff, but it's someone that they designate because that is the person that is with the president and has to make major decisions. If a crisis happens, the military aide is there with the football. Like I think all of you know, like there are very specific procedures on presidential travel, who travels, why they're there, what their role is. There's always somebody from the National Security Council there. There are specific people. So on this trip, my longtime mentor friend, Bruce Lindsay, was the traveling chief of staff. We have some Bruce stories we'll tell here in a minute. And Stephen was the president's aide. I don't remember who the rest of the people are in the trip, but someone in my office, I think it was Lee Satterfield or Patrick Steele, was where they were the scheduling desk for that trip.
Sounds right.
The scheduling desk is the person who's, working with the advanced people, getting all the details, putting the schedule together, physically typing the schedule, doing all those wonderful tasks that I just talked about. So the chief of staff, the traveling chief of staff, and the president's aide are always supposed to stay at the same location as the president. On this particular trip,
I would just like to point out that doesn't mean it's a nice place.
Right.
It's usually
it could be a broom closet. Right.
I literally stayed in a closet in the palace in Japan that had been converted into a bedroom for me.
Yes,
So
with a
location.
Yes. So on this particular trip, I remember President Clinton really wanted to stay at Greg Norman's place, and there wasn't enough room for the chief of staff to be there and Stephen. And the other rule with the traveling press corps is they are all supposed to be as close as possible. If they're not at the same venue, which they will just make your life hell for the press secretary if they do not get to be at the same venue or across the street. And again, this is another one of those that they were nowhere near the residence. And so
this is on Amelia Island in Florida, if anybody's been there. It's a very exclusive community.
Right.
So even if there were space,
Yeah. I don't remember all the particulars, but so long story short, Bruce Lindsay was not at Greg Norman's. He was staying somewhere at a hotel. Stephen Goodin was asleep in his broom closet. And President Clinton trips and falls in the middle of the night. And the Secret Service, rush him to the hospital, I think, with no staff. No chief of staff didn't know about this. The press pool, obviously, Stephen didn't even know about it.
Yeah.
How did you
I woke up, and I think the mill aid got left, too. So, those of you who've done trips.
Oh, the military aid never leaves the president.
If you wonder if Secret Service will leave you, they will definitely leave you.
Yeah.
And so we were waking up, processing what was going on, and then we went and grabbed a car and followed them to the hospital.
Right. So there was a huge brouhaha with the press. They were furious because obviously they didn't find out till much later this was happening. I don't remember speaking directly with Bruce about it, but I do remember the chief of staff at that time was the wonderful gentleman Erskine Bowles, who really is just, I have so much respect. I love him.
And never raises his voice.
Never have ever heard his raise his voice, except for that morning. So, I got to the White House every morning before 7 a.m. because we had a 7 a.m. meeting in the chief of staff's office. And I think it was, I don't remember if it was before or after that meeting, but I went up to his office and he said, and bring whoever the scheduling desk was with you. And I was like, okay. I knew, by that point, I knew what was going to be happening. And he was so angry with me. And I don't even remember saying it's fine to stay there. I'm sure. Anyway, I took the rap, and of course, I wasn't going to throw whoever the scheduling desk was under the bus because the buck stops with me. Or our president.
Probably was being pretty insistent
probably
about
said,
things.
I am staying there. Fix it, Stephanie. And so, anyway, we talked through it, and obviously we straightened up some procedures. I don't think there was ever a time that the traveling chief of staff didn't stay on the premises.
They got the broom closet. They started getting the broom closets.
Then he went to Walter Reed. He had to have surgery. He was on crutches for many, many weeks. It was like a big deal. Yeah. That was the day I thought I would get fired.
Well, I'm glad you survived it. Just a quick sidebar because...
You did too.
Yes. Optical images are very important around the presidency, right? So this happened at a time, as I recall, we were supposed to have a summit with Boris Yeltsin.
G7, wasn't it?
One of the big meetings with leaders. And so that was delayed by a day, but once we went, I think initially the president had to be in a wheelchair for a little bit.
And that was...
So he had to come off of Air Force One on a wheelchair and get onto a scissor lift.
We tried to do that behind, where people couldn't see it.
Did not look good.
No, it did not. Yeah.
So we got the bat out of the way. You survived that.
Yeah.
Erskine calmed down.
He
How about
did. The nickname. He
He's a
was
teddy
such
bear.
a great friend of the scheduling office. I just adore him to this day. And all the scheduling staff, we called him Trip Daddy. That was our nickname for him because he was so involved. Like he really wanted to be involved in the scheduling process. He created a whole new color coding system of how we brief the president.
New economy.
Right, new economy. There were different colors for different messages. Anyway, so affectionately, Erskine has always been Trip Daddy.
Too bad we didn't have some bling that he could wear. I'm picturing him with a big necklace.
Yeah.
Okay, so we survived that. How about some good memories? Some of the better memories. Favorite memories.
Well, as we all know, President Clinton is like the biggest Razorback fan, and I'm a third-generation Arkansas Razorback alumni. So having the opportunity to go to watch the Final Four game in Charlotte with the president, that was a pretty big deal. To be there.
I think Graham was on that trip, too,
I'm sure Graham finagled his way to do advance for that trip. He was always on the best trips. So, yes, that was a very great experience. But what's equally exciting was when the Razorbacks came to the White House and we got to call the hogs in the Rose Garden. That was a pretty cool experience. That was a lot of fun.
Just imagine how that sound would resonate with all that paved-over patio in the Rose Garden. That would be great, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it be? Yes.
Okay,
Wait, I have another one.
Go ahead.
So, on a more serious presidential trip that, again, siblings of mine were also involved in, Graham and Mary, was when the first time that Pope John Paul II came to the United States. And President Clinton, again, being so gracious, and I always felt like he wanted everybody else in the White House to be able to experience some of the privileges and the opportunities that we all had, that he was having as president. So on this particular trip, he loaded up Air Force One with every single Catholic he could find that worked in his administration. I mean, it was...
I don't even know how he knew the religion of so many people, but yes.
Well, you know, with his Georgetown roots and everything,
Making a point. Yes.
He's an honorary Catholic. So, loaded up Air Force One. This story is in this book that you and I just did little interviews for. But so the negotiations leading up to that visit were very intense. The Vatican Protocol Office doesn't mess around. They
one of the most difficult countries to deal with.
Literally, and they are tough, seasoned negotiators, and they take no prisoners, and it's their way or the highway. And
they're not nuns either.
No, they're not. So all of those negotiations about exactly what was going to happen, like to the second, like everything, like where the pillow was going to be placed on the chair, like it was just really, like the detail was pretty intense. And so there was not a lot of flexibility, I should say, on the schedule. And so when we were briefing the president about it, so we get on the plane right before we land, briefing the president about what's going to happen. Sort of the chatter that day on the plane was, I wonder if anyone besides the president and Secretary Clinton or First Lady and Chelsea are going to get to meet the Pope and have their picture made. Like, that was the chatter. And I was really trying to lower people's expectations. There was no way that was going to happen, ever. That, because they were very, very specific about it. So as we're briefing the president before we get off the plane, I was sort of going through and explaining what was going to happen. And I can't remember exactly. I said something like, thank you so much. Like, being on this trip means so much to me and to my mother and my family. What an amazing opportunity. 2 of my siblings are doing advance. So just want to say thank you. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I want to make sure that every person on this plane gets a photo made with the Pope and with me together. And I just remember staying there, and he's like, so go make that happen. And I just remember getting off the plane, and I remember talking to Alexis Herman, who was the head of public liaison, the director of public liaison. Rest her soul. She just passed away not too long ago. What an incredible woman. What a phenomenal leader. Because she was part of organizing this trip. And Milan Verveer, another Catholic who, so I went to them and I said, you are not going to believe. President Clinton told me that I was responsible for making sure every person on the plane got a photo. You guys were and we were just like, this is never going to happen. So all through the meetings, we were kind of like off to the side, like trying to figure out. And so my idea was, let's get Ambassador Flynn, who was our ambassador at the time, who was a seasoned politico from Boston. He was the mayor of Boston. Like, if anybody can like convince them to do these photos, it's going to be Mayor Flynn. Well, unfortunately, he was in the meetings with President Clinton, so there was no way to like pull him aside or reach him. So anyway, time is ticking. Like, we have got to figure this out. I am panicking. And all of a sudden, the doors fly open. Out comes the Pope, President Clinton, First Lady Hillary Clinton, Chelsea. They had just had their little tea, and it was time to go. It was time for the two of them to then walk across this grassy area to make some remarks at the two podiums, and then we were supposed to be whisking away. And I'm just like, again, another day that I thought I was going to be fired. The next thing I know, President Clinton, like, sort of does like this, and they're standing in front of this big room. And he's like, I see him say something, lean over to the Pope, and he's like, okay, come on, everybody, we're gonna get our pictures done or something. And everyone is like, people are on their way to the motorcade because, you know, and there's not a lot of communication. So I turned to someone, it may have been my sister Mary or Graham, just said, go get everybody and tell them to get back here stat. We're gonna do pictures. So everybody who was on the plane did get their picture made with President Clinton and the Pope, and he wanted to make, and every advanced person except one, Graham Streett, who for some reason did not get the message or was off goofing around and didn't.
He made it up with the Razorback.
Yeah. And every Air Force One personnel, baggage handler, every person got that opportunity because President Clinton was his own advanced person. I'm not giving any credit. I had failed. He stepped up and made it happen.
I think that's a great illustration of both of the Clintons. Something, you know, those of us who've worked in politics, there are some principals, they're called, who, like, there are people and then there are staff. Like, right. Staff is a lower level.
And then staff is like there's staff, and staff.
But they would always think about the people and the humans and, you know, take care of people. And he was the one person who could make that happen.
And he did it. Yeah, I think he probably looked at me and said failure, and he decided to...
Well, okay, so not to get off the positive, but...
The Vatican people all got their picture made, too.
It works both ways, right?
I
mean, we had a celebrity of our own sort to work with there. Okay, so not to take you off the positive, but there's another story I think maybe interesting from the state. You know, going to state dinners was sometimes part of the life at the White House. And did you have any? It was not
always state. Again, I think people have a very glorified image of what it's like to work in the White House. Yes, it's a privilege. We know it's a huge privilege, but it's like we work 7 days a week.
Well, and even at the state dinners, sometimes things don't go the way you want them to go.
That's true. That's right. So we're talking about, I did get invited to a state dinner. It was one of the last ones, I think in the last 2 years.
Never got invited to one, by the way.
Well, Dawn and I were both invited, but we were not married. So again, one of the rules is if you aren't married, you don't get to sit at the same table. So, and the way the Clintons, Secretary Clinton really had a lot to do with these state visits. She was very interested in the cuisine and making sure that all of these events reflected the best of America. She was criticized when she first came to the White House. Some of you may remember for firing the French chef, or dismissing the French chef and bringing in an American chef. But that was all part of like the Clintons and their view of history and the historic nature of this house and how it is the people's house, and it should reflect the best of our country. So brought in an American chef. At the state dinners, they were always, since the Kennedy administration, it was French service, so that the wait staff brought these huge trays, and in your black tie, you're supposed to take these little tweezers and get your food off and put it on your plate. Anyway, American service is they bring out the plate that's already composed and, again, very beautifully. American entertainment, like they really took pride in using state visits and official visits and the events at the White House to showcase the best of our country. So this particular visit for Václav Havel, who was someone that the Clintons both revered, usually when you plan a state visit, you consult with the Office of Protocol and sort of what their likes are, what their preferences are. Václav Havel loved As you know, he was a poet. Some of you will remember the Velvet Underground and that whole movement. Well, his favorite American performer was Lou Reed. And so the Clintons were bringing Lou Reed.
Yes.
Lou Reed to the White House. They had never seen anything like that before. So Lou Reed and Laurie Anderson, his wife, were the entertainment, and that was at the request of Václav Havel. Also, there were lots of other touches as a nod to, the visiting head of state. So Dawn and I got invited, and the seating also, every detail is like, everything is completely detailed and oriented in every seating chart. So Dawn was seated next to Jaromir Jagr, who was a hockey player. Dawn played hockey. And I was seated next to Rick Ocasek from the Cars. Not exactly sure why, but that was fun.
Makes total sense.
Total sense. And it was at the same table with Lou Reed and Laurie Anderson. It was quite an interesting table. There I am with my dinner companion. Well, so we're having our dinner, and there had been a misunderstanding earlier in the day during one of the rehearsals, and the sound that Lou Reed, the sound was so loud, the usher's office were freaking out because the chandeliers were shaking. They thought literally that the chandeliers were going to fall because the music was so loud. And they had never seen anything like that happening on the East Room. So
let me just, the usher's office we reference, for those who don't know, they are charged with managing the house.
The house.
Like their client is the house and the family. They make sure the family's comfortable in the house. But they're very dedicated to the integrity of the house.
Exactly. So Gary Walters, the chief usher, went to the First Lady and said, we're going to have them turn this music down. This is not acceptable. I'm really concerned. So she then turns to the social secretary, which is Ambassador Capricia Marshall, who many of you know, and said, Capricia, tell them they have to turn their music down. So Capricia went to Lou Reed and the band, and very Capricia-like, was like, oh, this was so great. Like, we're so excited. We love your music. Could you just have them turn it down just a little bit? And Lou Reed was so offended. He said to her specifically, there was a lot of sort of back and forth. He's like, this is my art. You're asking me to change my art. We will not perform if we have to turn our music down. So it was a big deal. So I can't remember exactly what happened next, but Lou Reed asked one of Capricia's assistants if some of the band members could come and sit at, I can't remember if it was for dessert or come in or somehow get a seat at the state dinner, so it got up to Capricia, so she went back to Lou Reed and said, I understand that you would like to have some extra people come to this state dinner. I have worked for weeks and weeks planning this event, every exquisite detail, and asking me to do this is really going to mess up my creative, artistic design. Long story short, it was like you turn your music down, I'll get your people in the state dinner. So that is how the music turned down. However, at my special table with Lou Reed and Laurie Anderson, they seemed very anxious about 10 or 15 minutes or 20 minutes before they were to perform. And Lou Reed looks at me and he says, where can I go to smoke? And I was like, nowhere. This is a non-smoking campus. We don't smoke at the White House except for on the secret balconies outside the scheduling office every once in a while. I just don't think that's possible. And I remember him with this, he goes, well, I guess I won't be performing. I can't perform unless I am able to go have a cigarette. It's a real problem. And I'm sitting here thinking, I cannot believe this has been put in my lap. And there was no way for me to text Capricia and say, guess what? Lou Reed is threatening to not perform again.
You're about to have a diplomatic incident over smoke.
Yes. And so finally, I'm just trying to think creatively, how am I going to make this happen? So I said, okay, here's the plan. I am going to exit and I'm going to go down. I'm going to meet you outside at the bottom of the staircase on the ground floor. Meet me there in 2 minutes. So I go down there, he comes out, and then of course his wife follows him, and so does Rick Ocasek. So I was trying not to make a scene. Well, they all get up and make a scene, and so I literally take them out through the floral shop to the back alley behind the White House by the dumpster so that they could smoke their cigarettes. And I was like, you got to hurry. Capricia's going to notice that all y'all are gone. And somehow I got them back into the White House, and the performance went on, and it was fabulous and great.
Did you smoke with them just so they didn't feel left out?
No.
Okay,
I
that's
did
good.
not.
You would
I
never
did
do
not.
that.
No.
Okay.
But those are some of the things that, like, people behind the scenes, like, see everything, and it all happens magically and smoothly, and people don't realize the kind of things that happen.
chaos.
The chaos. Yeah.
A lot of times people talk in campaigns in advance, in particular, about the duck principle, right? Like, above the water, you're supposed to be smooth and calm, even if you're flapping underneath the water frantically. Sounds like you were flapping.
I was flapping.
Quite a bit. Okay, so we're running low on time a little bit. There's one thing I wanted
We're
to...
on Clinton time.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
This is just a suggested,
Yes.
little countdown clock, yeah.
We would say that the schedule is merely some suggestions for Bill Clinton. You could do it or not do it.
Right.
Just whatever you're feeling. So I just want to ask you, with your mother here and your daughter here, and despite the Clintons' focus on empowerment and inclusivity, I recall, and I've observed from the conversation with Mignon, sometimes things might get said by a man in the White House that kind of went a little bit further than if it was said by a woman for some reason, right? So even with, like, people who were very dedicated to it, and hopefully it's getting better, maybe it's a product of the time, but it takes a lot for a woman sometimes to be powerful and assertive in worlds and areas that are typically men's domains. And clearly, you have been very effective at that. What would you want to convey to your daughters' about that experience, and how what should they take from that for their life, or perhaps their exploration of public service?
I think, first of all, find your tribe and find other women. Women supporting women was really important in that era. In the 90s, I mean, things were not as progressive as they are now. Well, we feel like we're rolling backwards a little bit. But
pendulum swinging.
Yeah. The White House was still a pretty male-dominated place. And so you would find yourself in a meeting, and, again, as you mentioned, I was 26 when I got to the White House, 34 when I left. So I am in my late 20s, early 30s, like, making big decisions and telling people, no, you don't get to meet with the president, and, participating in these briefings and things. Now I look back and it seems very surreal, but, sometimes you have to, like, I fake it till you make it. That was a lot of what I did on a daily basis. Just, put on the, I am confident, I am this, and how you present yourself is a lot of times how you're perceived. So we're in these meetings and we're talking through issues, and, I remember several times, making a suggestion or having an idea, and it was like, okay, yeah, thank you, whatever. 2 minutes later, Paul Begala or, Rahm Emanuel says it, the same thing.
And they're like, them, but
I know, I love them, but Rahm, that is such a great idea. Oh my gosh, how did you come up with that? And so we had this little girls trick. So Alexis, Mignon, Maria Echeveste, Jen Palmieri, like, we would always have pre-meetings, and anyone who knows me knows that I don't ever walk into a meeting without a pre-meeting so that there's, like, a game plan. So we would have a game plan of how we were going to get our things accomplished or get things done, and we always knew that when that happened, and it usually happened quite a bit, that we would somebody else would step in. So either Alexis or Maria, I think that meeting that I'm referencing, it's very fresh in my mind, said, oh, Stephanie, that was such a great idea you had. Rahm, I'm so glad that you, like, heard Stephanie,
brought up
basically,
Stephanie's
like,
idea.
backing each other up, giving the person who actually had the idea the credit, and sort of, having each other's back. Like, that was a big thing in the Clinton White House. So that's the advice I would give to young women and young men. Like, always have a plan. Don't ever walk into a meeting unprepared, especially a meeting with consequences. Have your pre-meeting and have your people lined up and have a strategy ahead of time. That's
have other people's back, and have
other
people who
people's
will
back,
have your
and
back.
then people will have your back.
That's good. Okay, so again, you were one of the few people who was there from day one till the last day. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the last ride on Air Force One. What was the feeling? What was the mood? What was it like?
It was bittersweet. First of all, it was really exciting because obviously Hillary Clinton historically was elected the first senator, former first lady from New York. So that was really exciting. And at that time, were we still counting Chads at that point? I can't remember.
Yes, I think we were.
Well, no, because it was the inauguration. We were not counting.
Dangling Chads. Dangling Chads were done.
Yeah, but obviously Vice President Gore did not win. So it was, like I said, it was.
And he was fine with that.
He was, yeah. Well, maybe he actually, it's debatable. People will debate whether he did win or didn't, but he did the right thing for our country.
Amen.
And thank goodness, what an example he set by, it was a hard-fought fight. They did all of the counting and this, and the Supreme Court ruled, and he graciously, stepped away and said we should support our president, George Bush. So
Incredibly
it was bittersweet in that those two things happened at the same time. There were lots of tears. There were lots of war stories. You may remember a couple of weeks after that, there were all these articles about the Clinton staff and how we trashed Air Force One on that last ride and the W's off the computers. Did any of you know what I'm talking about? Do you remember that? I did not take a W off the computer. I don't know if any of my people did. I've heard stories that people did. I think maybe you did, or
I've heard about it. No, I was gone by then.
You were gone.
I've heard about it, but I also can't name a single person who actually did it.
I can't either. Well, one of the things that did happen is they said that we trashed Air Force One, that there was broken glass and wine and champagne spilled. Well, we were all in the big conference room about 10 or 15 minutes before we were landing in Westchester, and the White House stewards brought out trays of champagne. We were going to have one final toast, and Sharon, the White House photographer, came in the room to snap all the pictures she was snapping, and accidentally tripped and fell onto one of the stewards who had a huge tray of champagne, and it the glasses went flying. There was broken glass, but that was not because we were having some crazy throwdown
totally
party.
Innocent.
It actually happened, but it was mischaracterized, obviously. Probably one of those, it was mischaracterized by someone who called the press and gave inaccurate information.
Evildoers.
Yeah.
Okay, our clock has run out. I don't know if we have to respect that or what.
We started 7 minutes.
Oh, okay, all right. Can we get 7 more minutes back on the clock,
5.
please?
We'll say 5.
5 more minutes back on the clock. What about little-known funny stories about our dear beloved Clintons? Anything that...
I'm sure you have a whole...
Little-known funny stories that you can share in public.
Okay, yeah. This is, remember, C-SPAN. Yeah.
It's not HBO.
Yeah. One funny is President Clinton never carried cash, never had any money. I remember, and I know you've had this similar experience.
I see some knowing glances in the audience,
Right,
too.
never had cash. So I can't remember why, but it was a Saturday, and I was in the office. I was always there on Saturdays. And I think he'd done the radio dress, and for some reason, he needed some cash. So he asked me if I had any cash that he could borrow. I didn't carry a lot of cash. I probably went out to the ATM and got some, and I think I gave him $100. I'm sure I did. I would have never had $100. Gave him the cash. I can't remember what it was for. And about a month later, in the mail, I got a reimbursement check signed by Hillary Clinton. And I remember, it's somewhere in a box, but I obviously didn't cash it. That was a really cool thing, a memento to have a check written on this, during those years by...
I still have my Hillary Rodham Clinton check.
Yeah.
Anybody else? She's probably frantically trying to balance that account. I just don't know where it went.
Yes, those just funny there's lots of little moments like that.
So, sorry, you and I talked a little bit about, before this show, just one of the interesting things for me, too, thing about President Clinton, he's obviously one of the smartest people you will ever meet in your entire life. And so one of the things that I found interesting over my time with him was the way that he would contemplate things or ruminate about something. When he had something on his mind, he loved to fidget with all the little things in his office. He would this little tchotchke needs to be like that instead of
Right.
this.
And
this one needs to go to that
flower
shelf and this
yeah.
shelf. Yes.
Yeah.
And so it just fascinated me because
Putting books in alphabetical order by the authors, or then deciding putting them in alphabetical order by the titles, or, yeah.
he's got so much gray matter, and he's, like he needs to use it for something complex.
And he's playing Sudoku, doing a crossword puzzle, reading a book, and reading a briefing memo, and having a scheduling meeting all at the same time.
And playing hearts and shooting the moon.
And you think he's not paying attention, and then you'll say something like just trying to and he's like, I did not say that I was going to do that. It's uncanny.
So he didn't mean to make us feel not so smart, but that was one of my takeaways.
Yeah.
All right.
He also likes to take credit for all of the marriages that took place.
That's true. Clinton couples.
Clinton couples.
You guys are definitely a Clinton couple.
You're a Clinton couple.
I'm a Clinton couple.
Your wedding was so fun, except for all those bugs. It was really fun, though. It was really fun.
It lasted too long. The reception lasted.
No, it was not. It was the wedding. It was the wedding out in the field.
Oh, yeah.
But it was the whole. It was really fun.
Well, we were trying to,
Make it
inoculate
natural.
you with champagne so you wouldn't notice the mosquitoes.
Exactly. No, that was fun. How did you and Bib meet? I'm turning my moderator.
Oh gosh. Okay. So we were actually set up by another mutual friend of ours, Laura Hardigan.
Okay.
And she tried to set us up for about 1.5 years, and each of us was like, I don't do blind dates. No, thank you.
Yeah.
And then finally, we literally bumped into each other. She had come to the White House for lunch. She had worked for Rahm
Good
Emanuel.
friend of mine as well.
Yes. And
One of the Bettys.
and they had there was a lunch at the White House mess of the people who had worked for Rahm over the last couple of years or whatever, and she was there for that. And we literally, physically bumped into each other. Those who know the West Wing, there's a very tiny stairwell between the first floor and downstairs where the White House mess is. And you have to be careful because, if there's a crowd there, it's very tight.
2 people cannot walk up the stairs at the same time.
So we literally bumped into each other, and each of us separately was like, all right, I could go on one date.
So did you ask her out right there in the stairwell, or did you call her?
No. I was too cool for that, of course.
That's very
But
cool.
she was too cool. Now I'm telling too much. I hope she doesn't see this. I did call her that weekend, but I called her Friday night to go out on Saturday, which
Ooh.
not a good thing, fellas. Don't do that. So she was like, of course I'm not available tomorrow night, Saturday night. She's like, but I can go out Sunday night.
Well, I had a similar sort of setup. Our jobs were so crazy, you never had a chance to go out and meet people. I think part of that, why we were all so close, is because we were all together 24/7. We didn't have a social life. It's not like we went out, to have fun and meet new people. So my friend Lorraine Voles was trying to set me up on a blind date. I had been on some particularly horrific blind date, so I was not keen to be set up on another blind date.
DC is not a good city for eligible women for
No,
some reason. It's just
not.
oof.
Yeah. So anyway, she kept saying there's this really cute guy. He works with Dan. Her husband was Senator Harkin's chief of staff, and we want to get you guys together at some point. I was like, sure, whatever, thank you. I just never really thought much about it until one Friday, she comes in my office and grabs me. She goes, Stephanie, I want to introduce you to somebody. Come with me to the Roosevelt Room. Well, President Clinton was taping his radio address, and he always did it with an audience. And so she pulls me into the Roosevelt Room, and I'm in Stephanie Streett scheduler work mode, watching the clock, And all of a sudden, she says, Stephanie, this is Don, the guy we've been telling you about. Don, this is Stephanie. And then literally at that moment, the military aide, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. So there was this awkward, weird high, I was I didn't have a chance to go do put some lipstick on. I just assumed it was going to be someone who wanted a meeting with the president.
Like a good Southern woman would.
That I was going to have to nicely say, no, the president's not coming to your pie supper or whatever. So we made some awkward small talk during the radio address, and after the radio address was over, I had to go back in the Oval Office because the president would always do pictures in front of the Resolute desk with everybody that came. So little line forms, and Don tells a little different version of this story than I do. But so Don comes through the line. He was with Senator Harkin. They were there at the radio address. And so they come through the line, and Senator Harkin, no, granted, Don is never been to the White House before. He's obviously never been in the Oval Office. He's never met a president. And here's this girl who's kind of a bee that he's supposed to ask out on a date, and she's very sort of standoffish, and so you can imagine the scene. And so Senator Harkin introduces him to President Clinton, and he said he was so nervous, all he could say was, "I like your tie, sir." And I think he had on a Jerry Garcia tie. I was looking at one of the archivists, Adam, today pulled out the radio address from that day because I was trying to remember specifics about it. And so I have a photo of Don shaking hands with President Clinton with this kind of stone face, "I like your tie, sir." And then, we started talking. The president was talking to Senator Harkin, and I'm, making small talk, but like very much on the clock. Could you please help me get your boss to stop talking because President Clinton has a meeting? Anyway, long story short, as he's walking out with Tom Harkin, he turns around and says, "Hey, would you like to go out on a date sometime?" And I was like, "Sure, get my number from Lorraine. Gotta go, bye." So anyway, yes, we phone tagged for a couple weeks. We went on our first date, and then 5 years.
The rest is history.
The rest is history, and here we are, 35 years.
Okay, you sparked one more. If we have time for one more.
Yes, one more.
So you obviously, jokingly we'd call Dr. No the lawyers a lot of times, but as scheduler, you are Dr. No. No, he cannot come to your event. But you also had to be Dr. No to William Jefferson Clinton.
Oh yes.
What was it like when you had to present bad news? How did you handle that as Dr. No?
Well, I had a little bag of tricks, as you know, Stephen, because I had to meet with President Clinton every day as the scheduler, and a lot of times it would get moved or blown off, but on paper, every day I would meet with him, and it was normally just to go through, like, here's what's happening tomorrow, here's some decisions you need to make, here's some things, but I always tried to have like a piece of good news because, I needed to always bring some good news because most likely, there were other things that were going to be annoying him that would all be reflected in how he was going to be spending his time. So didn't take it personally. I knew that he had the hardest job in the world, and, sometimes letting off steam with someone is, I was there a lot of times for some of that, and became very skilled at diffusing techniques. Usually bringing up the Razorbacks was a good distraction if things were going well. The compliments about, the tie brings out the color of your eyes. Have you lost weight? You look so good. I love your suit. Those types of things. Asking about, Chelsea, what's she doing? Anyway, and then a lot of times bringing someone into the office with me when I knew it was going to be a particularly tough thing. Like Mignon, was someone that I would usually grab with me to come talk about a particular thing, or whoever the person was. But then I always had something fun, exciting, good news that I would drop at the most opportune moment. So, I still use some of those techniques today.
We hope Bill Clinton is not watching. You might understand those techniques. Okay, do we need to wrap it up? I don't know.
I guess. Where's Jay? Oh, Jay, are you doing the wrapping?
Do people have to go home, or do we have sleeping bags? Where are the sleeping bags?
Where are the sleeping bags? Well, maybe we'll do this again sometime. But Thank you again. It's one thing. It's like so fun to look around this room and see like people like Rob Walker, who was like, I was 15, he was like 3 when we worked in the White House, and my cousin Catherine Grundon, who is here, who we lived together in D.C. She worked for Secretary Slater. She worked for Secretary Cisneros, and now works for General Wesley Clark. And what a great time. What a great time for my family. All of my siblings worked in the campaign and did advance, and even my baby brother Jimmy, who was in high school and college, got to do advance for one of the papal visits when the Pope came to New Orleans when he was in school there. But I feel so blessed and privileged to continue on this journey and have a job where I get to continue to work alongside really talented people, but work for 2 individuals that are still laser focused on helping people live better lives, that are still focused on bringing opportunities back to this state and this Presidential Center here and the civic engagement activities and educational programs that we do in partnership with Jay and his team, like, are very important to them. They still care deeply. They care about Arkansas. They care about what happens here. They care about the quality of the programs that we present. So please know how much they care. I think a lot of you know that we're embarking on a little expansion, which is very exciting. We'll have more to say on that in the future. But again, all of these things are only possible because of the support of the people in this room and our donors and our ambassadors. And we're excited about the future. I think the best is yet to come here.
Yeah, and I just want to add, I don't really have anything to say, but I feel like I should have the last word as the moderator. No, you're alluding to, I mean, the bond that those of us who worked in the administrations, be it as governor, Arkansas Travelers, I'm talking about the whole family, is very tight. It's very warm. You know, you could call on those people, even if you haven't talked to them in 3 years, and they would have your back, whatever's going to happen. And I see that here at the foundation and at the center and the library as well. And it just gives me, it draws to mind for me a lesson that I've learned in my professional life since then. I was too young to know it when we were in the White House. Every organization's culture begins at the top.
Absolutely.
So what Stephanie's saying, like, you know, we reflect the culture of the Clintons and what they're committed to and what they're dedicated to. And you guys are fortunate enough to continue that work day to day here. So for those of us who aren't able to be part of it every day, thank you for what you're doing on behalf of everybody else.
Thank you, Stephen. This is fun.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you all.
Stephen, thank you for coming back to Little Rock. Welcome back. And Stephanie, thank you for doing what you do every day to continue this legacy and continue this work. And thank you all for allowing us to be a part, continue this work. And as always, please come back and safe travels. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank y'all.